If Sherlock Holmes were alive, he would probably say this about 1929. If everyone is winning, someone must be losing. That day, everyone thought they were winning. No one was looking for the loser, because there was no scream, no weapon, no visible killer, only rising charts, champagne glasses, and a very carefully hidden body. And that body was not cold yet. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the jury, detectives chasing a truth long buried on the dusty shelves of history. You did not come here today to listen to an ordinary economics lecture, or to get lost in the dull world of charts and curves. You came here to witness the autopsy of a cold-blooded crime that shook the foundations of the modern world, redrew maps, and silently consumed millions of lives because the massive corpse lying before us. The economy of 1929 did not die of old age, natural causes, or a simple market accident as history books and school curricula would have you believe. It was deliberately poisoned, systematically deceived, slowly suffocated, and finally pushed off an inevitable cliff. So how did the glittering, jazz-soaked, champagne-towered, supposedly unstoppable roaring 20s, where women were emancipating and every black model, tea rolling out of Henry Ford's factories, was sold as a ticket to the American dream, transform in just a few days, yes, just a few days, into the dark, cold cemetery of the Great Depression filled with suicides and breadlines. And to understand this, we must first place our detectives' magnifying glass on the victims' psychology of the time. On that thick and artificial mask of happiness it was wearing, World War I had ended. Europe lay in ruins, and America rose across the ocean as the world's new factory, its new bank, and most importantly, its new merchant of dreams. Streets glowed with electric light. Radios carried melodies and news simultaneously into millions of homes. For the first time in human history. Yet the real revolution was not in factories or technology, but inside people's minds. Because the insatiable monster we now call consumer culture, the very force that enslaves us today, was engineered in a laboratory precisely during those years. For in our grandfathers' time, people produced first, saved money, and only then consumed. Patience was a virtue. But in the 1920s, Wall Street's alchemists invented the philosophy of buy now, pay later, the first dose of the drug administered to the victim, installment plans, credit cards, mortgaged homes. People began spending money they had not yet earned and feeling rich in the process. And it is at exactly this moment that our murder weapon enters the scene. That sleek, seductive, yet lethal mechanism known as margin buying, or in today's language leveraged trading, as the system told ordinary people, butchers who had never read a balance sheet, barbers, housewives, elevator operators. Why wait to get rich by working and sweating? That's slow and outdated. Do you have $10 in your pocket? No problem. I trust you. I'll lend you 90 more. Go buy $100 stock. When it rises, you'll repay the loan and live like a king on the enormous profit. A perfect opportunity, a ticket to social mobility, a utopia where everyone gets a slice of the pie, except that almost no one among those millions read the deadly, blood-soaked footnote beneath that shiny contract. The one hiding the answer to the question, what if prices fall? And that answer was the margin call. The moment when the smiling broker knocks on your door at midnight, drops the mask, and says the party's over, bring the money now, this second, or I sell your house, your car, your future, a system that functioned like arsenic mixed into the victim's food and water day after day, without being noticed. By the autumn of 1929, nearly 3 out of every $5 in the market did not physically exist in any vault, but were entirely imaginary, created by debt, by hope stolen from the future, a ghost currency. And just like today's cryptomanias, NFT bubbles, absurd real estate price explosions, or gravity-defying tech stock charts, society had entered a state of collective hypnosis, a trance given scientific legitimacy when famed economist Irving Fisher declared, just days before the crash, that stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. Everyone wanted to believe the lie that this time was different, that a new era had arrived and old rules no longer applied, because facing reality meant leaving the party. Yet, as my mentor Sherlock Holmes always said, the best way to hide something is to place it in plain sight. The bubble was there for everyone to see, swelling, stretching, ready to burst at the seams, but no one dared to prick it, until the moment came when even shoeshine boys outside Wall Street began giving stock tips to powerful bankers, the very moment Joseph Kennedy famously observed that if even his shoeshine boy was talking about stocks, it was time to get out, because there were no fools left to pass the asset to at the top, and the game was over. When the calendar turned to Thursday, October 24th, the inevitable end arrived like a sledgehammer. As the opening bell rang in the grand trading hall of the New York Stock Exchange, something eerie and unprecedented occurred. The usual deafening buzz of buyers and sellers was replaced by the panicked screams of sellers alone. Buyers had vanished as if swallowed by the earth. Shares of the world's most valuable companies, General Electric, U.S. Steel, flew through the air, yet not a single hand reached out to catch them. Prices entered free fall like an elevator whose cables had snapped. And at that moment, the famous ticker tape machines transmitting prices across the nation fell hopelessly behind the volume of trades. First 15 minutes, then 1 hour, 2 hours, and finally for full hours. Imagine what that meant. Blindness, total darkness. Investors knew they were ruined, but had no idea whether they had lost only their savings, or also their homes, land, and their children's futures. Chaos, misinformation, fear, and uncertainty ruled as crowds gathered outside Wall Street not to celebrate, but to witness their own funerals. Amid this turmoil, the accomplices appeared at noon. The nation's most powerful bankers convened in J.P. Morgan's smoke-filled offices like a mafia council and decided to manipulate perception, sending Richard Whitney onto the trading floor to theatrically bid for U.S. Steel shares, far above market price, in a calculated bluff meant to signal that the giants stood behind the market. And for a fleeting moment it worked. Bleeding slowed, and people believed the crisis was over. But this was not recovery, only the victim's final breath. The so-called death rally, as fear spread like a virus over the closed weekend, culminating on Tuesday, October 29th. Black Tuesday, when 16 million shares were dumped, $14 billion evaporated in hours. And yet the real murder occurred afterward when the Federal Reserve, blinded by theory and arrogance, tightened money instead of providing liquidity, suffocating a bleeding economy, triggering bank failures, bank runs, the collapse of trust, shuttered factories, rotting crops, and proud men walking the streets with signs begging for food. And we study this corpse today not out of nostalgia, but because modern credit cards, instant loans, and leveraged trades are simply the digital, faster, more invisible descendants of margin buying, the system's DNA unchanged. And as I sign this autopsy report as economic Sherlock, I ask you one final question. Do you truly believe the financial ship you are on cannot sink? Or are you still dancing simply because the orchestra is playing and the lights are on? Remember that when the music stops, the game of musical chairs begins. And in economic history, there have always, without exception, been fewer chairs than people.